pleasure to invite Mrs. Akinfadeni to make our presentation. Thank you very much.
Please go along with me on a short presentation, but much more we'd like to get your feedback concerning some of the plans, some of the initiatives that have taken place already, and the ones we're looking to go into. And just before I start, from the feedback that we all gave about yesterday's program, I was saying to myself, oh wow, that's a tough act to follow. So I'm going to do my best, to deliver the speech, to deliver the presentation, and then get your feedback. And I hope we'll get some interaction as we go on. So the topic is financial inclusion, and we're looking also at development financing in Nigeria. What does this mean for us as a country? What does this mean for us as Nigerians? And what do we mean exactly by financial inclusion? Okay, so please go along. A short outline, we'll talk broadly about financial inclusion in Nigeria. We'll talk briefly about some of the initiatives of the Central Bank on development financing, and then a brief about some of the things we've done with the Gate Foundation to really push the financial inclusion agenda. And we'll end by the outlook for financial inclusion. What do we need to strengthen? Where do we want to be? Okay, let's just go into the presentation very quickly. In terms of overview, the Central Bank of Nigeria, as we know, is the apex regulator in the financial sector. Twin role, monetary policy, financial system stability. But in addition to those broad roles, the bank has also over the years gone into what we call developmental roles. And the reason is simple. If there's a gap, and you are the apex regulator in the financial system, responsibility is on you to address the gap and create an enabling environment for policies to thrive and for initiatives to also develop to support the economy. So for this reason, the Central Bank has gone into what we call development roles to support four broad areas. On one part, policy and regulation. A number of policies have been issued over the years to really set the tone, because that is the focus of policy. It's about the rule of the game. How do we play? In addition to that, there are programs and schemes that have been developed, riding then on the policy to really build the economy and support initiatives that are put forward. But to do that, there are two things that are also required. You need the institutions to run the initiatives. You need institutions to make the policies come alive. And at the end of the day, whatever we do as a bank is about people. It's about Nigerians. It's about all of us in this room. So for that reason, the bank also focuses a lot on building capacity. Because it's not enough to have schemes and programs and interventions, and the people are not able to effectively use them, or benefit from them, or take advantage of what is in the environment. So for that reason, that is the way it's set out. So to talk about financial inclusion, which is the focus of our discussion today, we put up some definitions from two key parts, and then we'll talk about Nigeria. What does financial inclusion mean, really? It's a term that, particularly over the last 5 years, has gained a lot of attention around the world. And in the area where I currently work is the Financial Inclusion Secretariat. We coordinate this on a national level for the country. So if you look again to the definition from the World Bank, the data says that over 2.1 billion people around the world do not have access to finance. And finance, we know, answers all things, to say. So for us to have 2.1 billion outside the financial system, and where we are concerned, 50% of that number is within developing worlds. And the World Bank says that financial inclusion can be a tool to reduce poverty and boost prosperity. Remember the 4 pillars we started with: policies, initiatives. With the right intervention, it can really be that tool to resolve some of the challenges we face. Now, leaving World Bank behind and coming closer on to Africa. Africa Development Bank as well, from their perspective, They see financial inclusion as a tool to promote innovation in the financial system and ultimately inclusive growth. And inclusive growth is broad, but it's also very simple. It's about giving the right opportunity to this part of the room and this part and that part. Essentially, whatever people have, big, small, medium, how do you make the best use of it? How do you get to use money? How do you have access to finance? It could be credit, it could be savings. For some people, it's pension, depending on the stage of life. But for everybody, of course, insurance will always have a strong value proposition. Okay? So for us as a country, what do we seek to achieve? In terms of financial inclusion, we want Nigerians to have what we call easy access to a broad range of financial services, which is suitable for their need and at the right price. And I'll explain. Easy access. For those of us in this room, imagine if you had to travel 50 kilometers from your home to get money out of the nearest ATM. How does that help your daily life? You probably will just keep that money under your pocket, in your pocket or under your pillow. I mean, it's just not worth it. So easy access, we are thinking of convenience. So for that reason, a lot of initiatives the bank has taken up over the years to develop what we call access points closer to the people, different interventions. It could be physical branches, but there are cost constraints, so we start to look at electronic channels that can bring the service closer to the people. Broad range of options. People shouldn't be limited. We all know one thing. We don't have the same opportunities, we don't have the same need. So for that reason, financial services needs to be dynamic. I can't say because I've served Chidima and she was happy with what I gave her, then of a necessity is what I should also give to him. Right? It should be suitable to the need of the person. An example we like to share is agriculture. Because in this country, agriculture is still a mainstay to a large extent. And the example we give to a financial institution is, imagine you're banking a farmer. A farmer that is producing a crop that requires 6 months to even grow. And then you have to grow, and then you have to harvest, you have to store before you sell. So if you gave him a 3 months loan, have you done him a service? Not entirely. Because within that 3 months, and then he has to pay your loan, his crop is still in the farm. Where will you pay the money from? So the point I'm making is, there's a challenge we've given to the financial institutions to begin to understand beyond just saying, this is what I sell, take it. To say, who am I selling? What am I providing? Does it suit? Does it meet the need? Okay? So for the farming example we've given, you need to know that this planting time is this, and it will take X number to plant and produce before it sells and then it can pay. Okay? And ultimately we talk about affordable cost. Another good example we give, insurance is important, but if you had to pay a ₦1 million premium, even for those of us in this room, yeah, how many people can afford a ₦1 million premium? Now imagine the generality of Nigerians. So for that reason, we are saying services should be right priced, such that the majority of people can benefit. We know in banking, we do what we call segmentation. We say this is high net worth, this is this is that, this is that. But we are saying beyond your categorization, does the service come at the right price? Does it meet the need? Is it affordable? Is it convenient? So this is really the premise for financial inclusion. Please move. And we also know that to deliver this, we need to overcome some challenges, some environmental, some systemic. Okay? And the major ones that we've identified, and we take a lot of credit we give a lot of credit to the FINA research that consistently on a biannual basis carries out this financial services survey in the country. And key things we identified. Why do people not have the right access to finance? And number one on the list, you will agree with me, is lack of income. If you don't even have an income, how do you begin to think of taking a loan or buying insurance? Right? So lack of income is a key concern. And which is why over the years, we talked about the development role, the bank has consistently worked on creating those opportunities to enhance income generating activities. And beyond the central bank as well, the federal government and the current administration, I believe, has laid out some very ambitious targets and initiatives to really grow production. Okay? So lack of income, distance to access points, we talked about it. It just doesn't encourage anyone. You have to travel 50 kilometers apart. Lack of knowledge, financial literacy. Right? We can be literate, but we can be financially literate. And in our work, we go around the country, and what we find will surprise you. You know? Someone in the market will tell you, oh, I bought this basket of tomato for 5,000 naira. And then I sold it over 2 days, and I sold it for 6,000 naira. And she says, oh, I made a profit of 1,000 naira. But did she really? You have to consider the fact that there's a cost you spend to transport that tomato to the market. There's probably somebody you're paying to sell it. And there's also the cost of storage, right? So financial literacy is a very delicate thing. So sometimes we know about money, but we might not know the right application. And which is why even sometimes when people have opportunities, they don't turn it around as effectively as they should. So a lot of challenge we see as well in terms of financial inclusion is literacy. How do we begin to encourage, to empower, to educate and inform, such that people become aware and they can be better managers of their resources? And ultimately, of course, cumbersome requirements. Sometimes it's just a border. Because you want to do a financial transaction, and then you have to go through 20 steps. So gradually, steps are being taken to begin to address some of this concern. Because the focus, like we said, is the majority of Nigerians. It's not enough to say we banked this small number. What we are seeking to is to expand the access across board. Please move. Okay? This is just informational. I think we talked about it in the opening slide, so I won't spend so much time here. And we've looked at this in detail, and we saw that the message of financial inclusion really supports the goal of what the regulator is trying to do in terms of monetary policy. Because the more people we are able to bring into the financial system, the better and the more effective the monetary policy. And it doesn't capture a sizable percentage of the economy. The policies will not be as effective because the people are not even concerned. If right now I'm excluded, I put my money in the bag under my bed, if something is happening within the formal environment, it doesn't really affect me. Apart from, I go out and then I need to do my daily transaction. So it supports the goal. Okay. Please move. So in terms of targets as a country, what have we assigned to do for ourselves? The baseline survey was done in 2010 to say what is the level of access to finance in Nigeria. And we saw as at that time that 46.3% of the adult population did not have access to finance. Huge number. Huge. And then, as a country, we set a target. We said, we know we may not do all this in 1 year, or all at once, but we want to move gradually. And the target was set. Can we bring this down to 20% by the year 2020? Okay? And based on the FINA research on a biannual basis, we're able to measure. And what we saw from the last research, as of 2014, I believe the next edition is coming out later this year, by the end of 2016, so we'll see how far we've gone. But what we've seen so far is that exclusion rate has since dropped from 46.3% to 39.5%. Impressive in some quarters, but we also know not so much in some other quarters. Because what we found, please let's move to the next slide, is the growth has not been even across the country. Remember we said it's a national strategy. So it needs to affect each and every one of us in this room, each and every part of the country. So where we've seen that we've made commendable growth in some regions, if you look across the slide, we've made less in some parts of the country for different reasons. Some purely for security, where financial services have to literally be grounded. Others because the level of poverty in the land was just a concern. And you will have something before you can save, right? and you must be producing something to take a loan because you have to pay back. So many reasons beyond this. So a challenge we're also giving ourselves, beyond chasing the national target, is to also see that as we grow, there's a bit more even development and growth across the country. Because we've seen, in a nutshell, we've seen commendable growth in some regions, but in some, it's not yet there. So we need to keep pushing. Please move. And of course, we've said a lot about the central bank, apex regulator, but this does not depend entirely on the central bank. It's a collaborative initiative. And for that reason, the National Financial Inclusion Strategy defines roles for different stakeholder types. In one category, you have what we call the providers. Those are the financial institutions. They have a key and critical responsibility in this. Because at the end of the day, they provide the service. They open their accounts, they give insurance, they take your pension contribution, they provide the channel to serve you. So there's a responsibility for them. And then you ask, what is the need for them? Beyond the social good, it is also the fact that it is a business opportunity. You're growing your customer base, say from 100,000 to potentially 300,000 or 400,000, depending on how you grow. Okay? So there's a strong role for service providers. And we are glad to know that over the course of the years, there has been several initiatives and products. The second category, which is where the central bank falls, is a category we call the enablers. And enablers, I think we'll be hearing more about most of them. Some were here yesterday, is really about governments and regulators. Because at the end of the day, the onus is on them to provide the enabling environment. We talked about policy. If the policies are not there, the rules of the game will not be defined. Right? So enablers have a key role to play. And their focus is really the federal government's commitment to grow the economy. Okay. And ultimately, we are glad there's another category called the supporting institution, of which the Bill and Melinda Gates falls. And I think they've done commendable well in that area. We'll talk more about some of the initiatives and the collaboration we've had with the foundation. So we have supporting institutions as well. The civil society, the development institution. Beyond the fact that, I want to be in a country I want to serve. They are maintaining a balance between social good and enterprise, because it's a delicate balance. Serving the bottom of the pyramid long term will be profitable, but in the short to medium term is cost and cost and cost and cost. Remember, we said the income is so, the income levels are low. So you need to have what we call patient capital, such that you can afford to build that branch where the community is just beginning to thrive, and then wait out for businesses to grow. So these are the three stakeholder types. Please move. And overall, to ensure implementation at a national level, enabling governance structure has been put in place. At the highest level, we have the National Financial Inclusion Steering Committee, chaired by the Central Bank Governor himself. And on that committee, we have heads of relevant MDAs, federal ministries, other regulators at that level. And they meet on a biannual basis. The first meeting for this year happened in January, and they meet on a biannual basis to assess. Some of the data I've shared with you are the data we submit to say what is going on. And then they look from the north to the south to the east to say what are the initiatives, what are the challenges, what needs to change. And at that level, they take policy decisions for the country. How do we move forward? There's a second level called the National Financial Inclusion Technical Committee, and as the name implies, it's a technical committee. So a lot of the operational interventions come from here. It's chaired by Deputy Governor in the Central Bank, and on that committee we have directors of all the partner agencies, like we've said. They meet quarterly. And ultimately we have the secretariats, the area where I work, and we coordinate stakeholders broadly, just to make sure that each stakeholder, remember the types, they perform their role. Either you're a regulator or a service provider or a supporting institution or the likes. Please move. And to really make this very effective, we also have 4 technical working areas to look at different things, because challenges come in different forms. So there's a product area that looks at insurance, that looks at pension, that looks at savings, that looks at credit. There's a channels area that looks at what we call dispersion of financial points across the country. Remember the map I showed you? This group works a lot with that map. And from the last geospatial analysis, which was actually conducted together with the Gates Foundation, we found that as at the end of 2015, 30% of all the local governments in Nigeria do not have a single bank. Over 200 local governments, not one bank branch. So you find people traveling, remember the example we gave in terms of convenience, traveling kilometers across to the next local government to cash out their salaries. So you can imagine what comes with that. And there has been several issues in terms of that distance. So the challenge here is to gradually, and it has started, to build out access points in those areas. Such like, remember what we said, patient capital, the community can be stimulated gradually. Okay? We also have an area we call financial literacy. I think I spoke about literacy a while back. And it's really about building capabilities of communities and people. How do you handle money? What do you do with insurance? What does pension do for you? Okay? And the final area is the special interventions area. And that area focuses on 3 vulnerable groups that the governing committee has assigned. The first vulnerable group, of course, is women. Because over the years, statistics have shown that women continue to be less, included and with less economic opportunities. Then we look at the youths, because we see that year on year, the youth population is just growing. Many of them just fresh out of school, many of them just about to start their first job. And the challenge is to get them started the right way. And there's a focus now beyond, I've graduated, I want to get a job. How about I've graduated, I want to set up an enterprise, right? And the final group we look at, the vulnerable group, are the people with disabilities. I think we'll talk about that in a bit more. So this is the technical working area. Can we move? I think the rest are just for information. I'll just talk about it briefly. Like we've mentioned, financial inclusion is not just a CBN initiative. So we actually have interagency collaboration. And we've put up here some of the initiatives of our partners. I've talked about CBN, so I probably won't mention CBN again. From the National Pension Commission, a major milestone we've seen them take on for financial inclusion is the micro pension plan for the first time in the history of this country. I'm sure we all know that in 2004, we had the first Pension Reform Act, the Pension Act, that said there should be mandatory contributory pension in paid employment, which was different from the whole defined benefits pension. So what has happened was, in 2014, there was a review of that 2014 Pension Act, or 2004 Pension Act. So in 2014, this new reform focuses a lot on the informal sector, such that if you have just as few as 3 employees, you are entitled to start making some small contributions on their behalf. Because imagine at the end of an active lifestyle, you have nothing waiting for you. Do we want to be at the mercy of the general society, which may choose not to be generous? So the effort is really to build inclusion at that level. The Insurance Commission as well, they've also launched the micro-insurance program, where for a token fee, you can get insurance for a short period of time. It could be travel, it could be a short-term health insurance, it could be education insurance, it could be an education benefit. And the focus is really, like we said, make it as unique, as minute as possible, such that many people can benefit. Not just corporate insurance that for years and years the insurance was that chase after. But now we are really looking to the individual. How does an household get health insurance, for instance? Okay? I'll just talk about one more. The Nigerian Identity Management Commission is also a key stakeholder, and for their part, their major initiative, I think for this year and the next, is to really go about the harmonization of identity schemes. Because that is a challenge we've seen across the length and breadth of the financial system. How can you say Temitope is Temitope? Before the advent of BVN, I could choose to take a loan from 4 banks. In Bank 1, I could be paying fine, excellent customer. Bank 2, they would have to write off my loan because I would just not pay. Bank 3, my loan could be doubtful of standard. So really, financial service providers as well were at a receiving end because you really didn't know who you were dealing with. So you can uniquely identify people, and I'm sure we've all followed in the news some interesting revelations that have come to the surface just because of BVN. You've had in the past a single person, 300 accounts, several ATM cards, and so many things going on. So it's all about bringing discipline to the financial system and assuring, the integrity of consumers and service providers. So let's move. Industry association as well, they've gone on with different initiatives in the interest of our time. I won't go all through, but I'll focus on, for one, bankers committee, which has to do with commercial banks. The key initiative they are working on now has to do with what we talk about. How do we have access points across the country? Why should people travel 20 kilometers to get their salaries? So they are working on an initiative now to gradually build out points across the country so that people can be served. The microfinance sector is working on the rural development plan as well. How do we give the loans in the villages? How do we get people to save? Let's just move. Okay, so on this point, I think I'm rounding up gradually. On this point is for information. We'll be glad to share additional information later on and after the session. Is really to talk about some of the development initiatives the bank has taken on. We said beyond monetary policy, beyond financial stability, there's also development. How do we stimulate credit? So for that reason, the Central Bank of Nigeria over the years has gone into development financing. And the reason is simple. Improve access to finance for micro, medium, small enterprises. Beyond individual, which a lot of times we focus on, businesses also need finance. Businesses need finance. An example we like to share, again, I love tomato, maybe because tomato is so expensive now, it's a good example. The market woman selling the small, plates of tomatoes in the market. That's what she can afford to sell. But with the right credit, she can grow to selling a basket. And with the right discipline and training she can grow to selling a trailer of that same tomato. It's all about opportunity. And it's about the right access to finance. So imagine if we do that with one tomato seller in Kabusa market or Kuba or whatever. And then we do the same thing across for so many other tomato sellers. And so many other people in micro enterprises. It could be sewing, it could be anything. The focus is really to stimulate production. We talked about low income. It's not that some people don't want to work, but I believe the best of Nigeria is that we don't have so many of those people. Oftentimes, people just don't have the right opportunity. So giving the right support and opportunity, we can grow our country. And that is really the focus for development financing. So what has the central bank done over the years? What has the bank done over the years? We looked at this when we got this invitation. When we got the invitation for this program, and we looked through our books and we said, wow, the bank has actually done over 1 trillion naira of intervention into the Nigerian economy. Over 1 trillion. And then we analyzed it, and we started the office. We said, where has this money gone into? Yes. And we saw that the majority of them, like we sought out to achieve, has gone into the micro, small, and medium enterprises. A sizable portion as well has gone into agriculture. Another portion has gone into infrastructure financing. I'm sure we followed some of the interventions we've done in electricity, and at some point in aviation. Because if the economy is broken, and we know it is broken, we may not overhaul it overnight, but we need to take the steady steps. And as this is being fixed, remember what we said about the environment. If the environment is fixed, Nigerians are hardworking people. Nigerians are innovative. Nigerians are creative. Right? Gradually, you will improve for yourself first. And then your household. And then it will affect your enterprise. And from the enterprise, your community. And from your community to the nation. And that is really what we are pushing for. Please move. So basically, like we've said, in 4 sectors: agriculture, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and infrastructure intervention. Because we believe that this is really the pillar on which we can stimulate production in the country. So, a number of intervention schemes, for the sake of time, we won't go into all of them, but of course, it's all public information. You can actually log onto the CBN website to look through the details of them, or any of the CBN branches.
Okay,
This was
about
20 minutes, yeah. I want to give some time for discussion.
No, you mean X, you exclude, you can exclude. You see how to.
Can we continue?
Yes.
Yes. I think yes. So I think at this section, we just want to talk a bit about the collaboration with the Gates Foundation. And thank you, Dr. Meru and the team. This is really about what have we done together and where do we see this going. Okay? Please move further. Yeah. No, just go back to that picture for a moment. Yeah. One of the key partnerships we like to talk about in this room is really the collaboration of what we call digital financial inclusion in Nigeria. And this was really something that was conceived to support building out payments in the country. And it's a collaboration between the CBN, the Gates Foundation, and the Federal Ministry of Finance. Okay? And it's going to go on for quite a while. So please move. So basically, the Gates Foundation has supported the financial inclusion program in Nigeria to a very large extent. Some of the key ones we'd like to talk about is technical support to the Secretariat itself, the national body that coordinates the strategy. And by the extension of that, we're able to affect all the sectors we've spoken about. But beyond that as well, we have this collaboration we've spoken about. And the goal of that is simple. On one hand, is to support the achievement of the national strategy. Overall for Nigeria, how do we enable access to finance? And secondly, in enabling payments, the system has to be strengthened. Imagine if today, just for the sake of, today, assuming you're serving 1 million clients, and because of this intervention, you then have to serve 3 million clients. You know, of course, that your capacity to serve them also needs to increase. So there's a portion of this work that has to do with the payment system infrastructure in Nigeria that we're working on, such that it will be more robust to handle transactions we expect to grow and come in. And ultimately, the final part we get very excited about, because it is the opportunity we have seen to really enhance what we call efficiency in the payment systems, and then to cut out waste. We all follow the news, we all see some reports sometimes, and we all know the challenges of cash. Because cash, we know, is anonymous, really. And trading cash, all the trail for cash is weak. But if it's digitized end-to-end, you know who is paying, you know who is receiving. You can track it, right? And with a stronger payment system and electronic payments in the country, we can really say this is what we're spending, this is who this is going for, and this is how payments are going on. So for this initiative, it's a long-term program, but the stage where we are now, there are two initiatives that have been approved. The first one is in terms of electronic wallet for farmers. The second part is digitizing the social transfers in the country. Please move. So just in a nutshell, payment for farmers, and why the focus on farmers? I think even in the examples I've given, I alluded a lot to agriculture, because it's an area of the country that we believe needs to go back to its glory days. And it's an area that potentially can employ millions of Nigerians. And in fact, even today, it employs several Nigerians. From the database we have, the famous database in the country, potentially about 40 million people in farming. But largely the payment within that sector is cash, which is, attendant and issues. So the focus is to see how we can digitize payments within the agricultural sector. So move on. The second program is digitizing social transfers, really. And on one hand is really how do we end-to-end encourage digitization of payments across the country. We've all heard the announcements in terms of social protection program in the country and how that's going to go. So a large portion of this initiative will be dedicated to ensuring that cash as much as possible is eliminated in that. such that there is integrity. Okay? And you can come back time and time again to say who got what was paid, where did it go to. And then there's transparency, and then you can query. So move on. So those are two initiatives we wanted to talk about. Future outlook. What are the key areas we really want to focus on? We said a lot of things about financial inclusion, and if there's anything we would like to remember, 4 things we said. Easy access. How do we create convenience in financial transactions? Options for people. Right? The services should meet the need of the people, and it should be affordable. Okay? So in doing all that, we need to scale up electronic payments in the country. And there's no way we can scale up payments when people don't have access points. I think we talked about that a bit as well. If from my house to my office, there's just one bank, right? And that's where everybody goes. There's inefficiency because then you find the queues, and then the bank might not even serve you well because they're the only one right there. There are issues. So it is really about building out the access points, building the innovation around access points. So for this reason, we are gradually looking beyond the physical branches. We are looking to channels. We are looking to agent banking. We are looking to POSs. We are looking to mobile money and the likes. Savings. The key challenge we've seen from studies done is that number one, income we've also spoken about. We need to encourage production for income levels to go up. But even when people then have the money, they need to be financially literate. What then do you do with the money? Okay? How do you save? And the message we try to encourage as we go along is income is not just for expenses. Income is to save, is to spend, is to invest. Right? Save, expend, invest. And borrow if you need to. And please, we'd like to sound it in this room. Borrowing for us is required and we have the capacity by all means. Okay? So save, expend, invest, borrow if need be. But the conditions have to be right. And you need to put what you're getting into. Okay? Credit as well, the same thing. Distance has been an issue, cost of credit has been an issue, and a lot of work is going on around this. And we believe strongly that with those interventions, we'll see appreciable growth in this area. On the development segment, MSME remains the focus because we believe that we may not build industries, but we can build micro enterprises faster. Recently, the central bank, I think about 2 months ago, actually launched a recent scheme. The first one actually targeted at youth, the Youth Innovative Entrepreneurial Development Scheme. And it's targeted at youth corporates, those who are 7 and those who are 5 years post-service. You can get up to 3 million naira as a person, based on the business plan. As a group, you can get up to 10 million. And the message we're sending out really is not every time you graduate, you go look for a job. And we were amazed, even when that work was going on, a lot of our youth in school have ideas. A lot. Sometimes what they need, sometimes some even have some little capital they can start. That's the truth. But not everybody might have the capital. But sometimes what they need is the right mentoring to get it started. So for that reason as well, I'm not sure it's covered in the slide, but I can mention, the bank has over the years deployed 6 what we call entrepreneurial development centers, one in each geopolitical zone across the country. And the focus is really about entrepreneurship mentoring. People oftentimes have the ideas, they know what they want to do. When the program was launched, the youth, in fact, the corporates from camp came. And we were amazed by what they were already doing. Some were sewing. And they had an open day exhibition and they sold. Some had made dresses for sale. They were selling, they were in camps. Some were baking, some were doing leather works, some were doing many things. And with the right access to finance, you can grow that. Who says your tailoring cannot grow to become an industry? Who says you cannot grow? Who says you cannot employ 1,000 persons? But it's a question of opportunity, it's a question of mentoring, it's a question of finance. Okay? So MSME will remain a key segment. Agriculture will remain a key segment. Food security, my apologies, we couldn't attend the session yesterday, but we had really, encouraging encouraging reviews. So agriculture will remain a key area that we really need to focus and support with the right access to finance. Health as well is an area. Over the years, Nigeria has gone into what we call medical tourism. But there's a challenge for us now to revive our sector. To revive our sector. Not everyone can afford to travel out. The majority of Nigerians really cannot afford it. Nobody has to die. Nobody has to suffer ill health for the sake of unavailable health services. So these three areas will remain priority as we go along. And yeah. So in conclusion, just to bring it together, I think this is the last slide. Financial inclusion, like we said, is about inclusive growth. And inclusive in the sense that we don't want to focus on just, let the rich get richer. They will get richer because they became rich by those who did through productive enterprise, not those who did through other means. Because you had the right opportunity, the right finance, the right mentoring. We can do the same for many more Nigerians. Many more Nigerians. We can start with the youth. We can start with ourselves. The right access. Income is not just to spend, like we said. It's about, you can spend. You need to fulfill your duties at the home. Right? There are costs for living. But it's not to spend and spend and spend. We need to have a conscious focus on saving. We say a lot of Nigeria didn't save as a country. And I said to myself as well, at the individual level, I was saving. It's a question we need to ask ourselves. And it's a question we need to also pass on as we go along. And as we are saving, are we investing? Right? Investing could be in assets. It could be in, it could be in financial instruments. Sometimes investment is in people, right? But the focus is not to get and spend. The focus is really to stimulate production, to stimulate enterprise, such that we can begin to rebuild, we can begin to enhance what we have. So financial inclusion is about inclusive growth, like I said. But we know that to make it happen, we need to overcome those barriers we talked about. Distance, so we continue working on building out the access points. Convenience, process. Free-tiered KYC has come in. In the past, you needed to have a driver's license and international passport to open an account. But how many people have those things? So that has changed. So now we have three-tiered KYC. At the basic tier, tier 1, all you need to have a bank account is your face, a passport photograph, a phone number, and your address. So really, the barriers that for years have hindered us as a country and held people back from the financial system have been taken away gradually. Okay? So ultimately, it is our desire, and like the governor said, that we can work together to achieve our goals and give Nigerians, the chance to live longer, better, more productive lives. Thank you very much.
For coming. Please, can you tell us your name and what organization you represent?
Okay. My name is Temitope Akinfade. I work with the Central Bank of Nigeria. I serve as the head of Financial Inclusion Secretariat.
What are your takeaways from this year's meeting?
I think the major takeaway for me. I think the major takeaway for me is the need to sustain what I'll call inter-sector collaboration. The theme for this year has been development, and from what I've seen of the program, a lot of the stakeholders actually have one thing or the other to do with development. So the challenge is to sustain the collaboration between the sectors.
So how do you intend to put this? To begin to put this into the work that you're doing?
I think on our part as Financial Inclusion Secretariat within the Central Bank, already we do a lot of interagency collaboration, but I think what I see really is the need to engage new partners. A key takeaway was the civil society, that we need to do a lot more, particularly in terms of literacy and expansion into rural areas. I think that's a major one for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What's the name of the organization you represent?
My name is Bosola Oladende Okbeodu. I work with Cassava Adding Value for Africa Phase 2, based out of the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Nigeria.
Can you kindly share with us some of your takeaways from this meeting?
So this is the first time I'm actually joining the BMGF Partners meeting, and I would have to say that it's been very enlightening. We've had the opportunity to talk with different ministries of the federal government of Nigeria and get insight on their plans for the future, not just long-term plans, but their midterm and short-term plans as well, which we can work on implementing within our projects.
So going forward, how do you intend to put this into the work you're doing?
So going forward, in regards to agriculture and also financial inclusion, we work with a lot of small, medium entrepreneurs as well as smallholder farmers that often come to us with issues around access to financial institutions or funding, loan systems. And the information we've gotten here is that not only is the CBN working in this area of being able to help in having banks or mobile money applications available, but the Ministry of Agriculture as well is working on different ways of reducing the loan percentage rate as well. So what we're planning on doing is passing on this information to our farmers and our SMEs and the partners we work with, and also engaging more with the ministries to give them feedback on what's working and what's not working for the people that we're intervening and working with.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
My name is Philip Amowa. I'm the network coordinator for the Civil Society Scaling Up Nutrition in Nigeria. I appreciate this meeting because it gave me the opportunity to participate in a forum where the Honorable Minister of Health and was talking about the next policy drive with respect to health. And I was thrilled that among the key quick wins, nutrition is up there. Even though we needed clarification on whether the prevention aspect is there or not. But that clarification was given by the ED of the National Primary Healthcare Agency. So it's been fulfilling with respect to the health aspect. In that, again, he reiterated the point that Nigeria has a lot of policies. Implementation is the issue. Let's hope that we'll see the focus on policies now being implemented, especially with the National Strategic Plan of Action on Nutrition. We should improve nutrition in Nigeria among our vulnerable mothers and their children.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How do you intend to put all of this that you have learned into use going forward?
CSON has been advocating for policy implementation. So we are going to monitor the talk. We're going to be on the watch out and see that what they said that they will do, will do. We know that the policy has not been scaled up to the states in this country. So we're going to see whether what the agency ED said yesterday, that we should all partner and work because the PPP aspect is there. We're going to ride on board. The platform has been presented and we're going to key in. That's how we want to use it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.